Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? Welcome to another edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. My name is TJAY Jones. Thank you for checking out the podcast. I really do appreciate it. Well, Who Dat Nation, this episode is dedicated to you. That's right. This is a Q&A edition of the State of the Saints podcast, where I answer questions from some of the loyal listeners of this particular podcast, man. And first off, anybody that takes the time out to listen to this podcast, I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. The State of the Saints podcast has officially reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you very much. I remember when I decided to start the State of the Saints podcast, it was at the beginning of the season, right after the week 1 game where the Saints lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I decided to start the podcast. And with your help, the podcast has become an extreme success. So from the bottom of my heart, once again, I want to say thank you very much before I start anything. But let's go ahead and get into it. Right now, I have 3 questions that were submitted by listeners of the podcast. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. The first question comes from Buddy Lejeune. Shouts out to you, Buddy. But his question is, do you think Payton going to leave for Dallas next year? Now, for those that don't know, there were stories that were going around to say that the Dallas Cowboys was interested in Sean Payton next year. Sean Payton contract is up next year. He signed a 5-year deal through the year 2020. And of course, 2020 is next year. So Sean Payton will not be under contract. So a lot of people have been saying NFL Network, Ian Rappaport, even on Dallas Morning News have been reporting that Sean Payton might be interested in going back to the Dallas Cowboys, and instead of being an assistant coach, being the head coach. And do I think that the New Orleans Saints will allow that to happen? Hell no. Okay. I mean, out of respect for you, buddy, I'm going to answer this question. I don't even like to entertain stuff like this because it's just absolutely ridiculous to even think that Sean Payton would be interested in going to the Dallas Cowboys. I think that is just something that the media likes to do. They like to stir the pot. They like to come up with these scenarios. We hear it all the time when we're looking at sports shows. Like, you know, they're always trying to put 2 players up against each other. Who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron? Who a better quarterback, Joe Montana, Tom Brady? Who was the greatest of all time? We always trying to do that. So they're always trying to stir the pot when it comes to trades. We heard it as New Orleans Pelican fans. People were talking about how Anthony Davis was going to go to the Lakers. I mean, we just hear this stuff, man. So to answer your question, I'm going to say absolutely not, man. The New Orleans Saints have something special. I come on here and I talk about that all the time, how the New Orleans Saints had the best draft class in NFL history when they got some of that young talent on their team, like a Alvin Kamara, like a Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Alex Anzalone. This was one of the best draft classes we ever seen. This is Sean Payton's baby. He's the one that created it, and I think that he is going to try to see this thing through. Now, if the Saints, you know, down the line probably have some bad seasons, maybe Sean Payton may step down and may lead the organization. I mean, that's something that we have seen in the past. I mean, we've seen with Andy Reid, who spent so many years with the Philadelphia Eagles, but he needed a change of scenery. And I understand when a coach is in one place for a long period of time, maybe a change of scenery will do it for him. But, you know, I mean, Sean Payton, he's built something. I mean, he's built something very special. For those that have been lifelong Saints fans like myself, we know about the growing pains and some of the heartbreaking pain we experienced as Saints fans watching this team just lose year after year. And Sean Payton and Drew Brees come through the door. And not only do they make us Super Bowl champions, but they make us contenders, man, and relevant in the National Football League. So I think that Sean Payton is going to continue to be the Saints head coach. I don't think that Gail Benson is going to allow Sean Payton to leave. I think his relationship with Gail Benson and with the Saints trust is very, very good. The Saints organization rely on Sean Payton. I think that he likes his role, and I think he's going to continue to do it. If he moved to the Dallas Cowboys, we all know what that circus is all about. I mean, it's all about Jerry Jones. It's all about, show is all about entertainment. And I don't think that Sean Payton is the type of guy that would allow a guy like Jerry Jones to always be in the interviews and always just try to take over. Sean Payton is a guy who has a huge ego, and he's a guy that is not going to tolerate any mess, man. He is going to do what's best for the team. We've seen him get rid of some good players, all in the name of making sure that this team has good chemistry. So I respect Sean Payton, and I know that he wants to be the Saints head coach for years to come. Next question. Next question comes from Ed Creel. Shouts out to Ed. I mean, Ed is somebody I interact with all the time on social media, always sending me good questions. He wanted me to ask about Jared Cook. Have I heard any news on Jared Cook? Well, we all see all of the news regarding Jared Cook. If you're listening to this show as of right now, I am recording it on a Sunday afternoon, and Jared Cook has not officially signed with the New Orleans Saints. Now, we got all of this media coverage that is saying that all roads indicate, or all signs indicate rather, that he is going to be a part of the Saints organization. And I seen that Jared Cook also posted a thank you to the fans of the Oakland Raiders. So it looks like he is going to be a New Orleans Saints. But until it comes out and it becomes official, we're just basically just holding our breath. I mean, we don't know. I mean, these contract negotiations, they can stretch out, man. They can be as early as a guy coming in for an interview, and he comes in and he gets wild, and his team likes the organization, and he likes the organization, and the organization likes him, and they sign on the dotted line. And then there are times where a guy actually comes in, he wants to weigh out his options. He tells the team, talk to my agent, and they try to, dot the I's and cross the T's. And I think that this is what the New Orleans Saints are trying to do when it comes to Jared Cook. According to Mike Triplett of ESPN, I tweeted him on Twitter, and he was talking about Jared Cook. He said it's just a matter of dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And I think that's a good look. So Jared Cook is going to be a Saint, but until then, we just basically just have to just sit around and wait, man. We're just playing a waiting game, and I don't blame Jared Cook. I mean, as an NFL player, it's very important that these guys get these good contracts, man, because these owners and these people get all this money, man, billions upon billions of dollars. They get money off these players' likeness, off their jersey sales, all of that, man. And these players are trying to get the best contract they can possibly get to make sure that they're financially stable. And I have absolutely no problem with that. I want everybody to pay attention to this, okay? Now, a player's career probably spans, I don't know, like 10 to 12 years, right? Okay, if you're a quarterback, probably a little bit longer. But if you're like a cornerback, running back, wide receiver, they say that the average NFL player's career is like 3 to 5 years. If you're something special, it's maybe like 10 to 12. But you got to think about these owners, man. They're going to be owners for years to come. So they're going to continue to make money. When that player retires or leaves that team, another player is going to come in and he's going to get money off that player. So I have no problem with these players out here trying to get the best contract possible to make themselves financially stable. So Jared Cook, it seems like that is what they're trying to do. But once again, it looks like he will be a New Orleans Saint, and I have absolutely no issue with that. And the final question comes from Amber Lewis. What's going on, Amber? Amber asked, do you think that Teddy Bridgewater is the future of the New Orleans Saints? He had a really bad game in week 17, and ever since then, it has stuck in my mind. I think that he is a good quarterback, but I don't think he is the future. What do you think? Well, thank you very much, Amber, for submitting your question to me. But to answer your question, do I think that Teddy Bridgewater is the future of the New Orleans Saints? I'm going to say yes and no. And I'm going to go ahead and clarify what I mean by this. Yes, I feel like he's the future of the New Orleans Saints because I think that the team has invested in him. I don't think that they are going to try to bring a guy back who is just going to be a quality backup. I think that the Saints see something special in Teddy Bridgewater. I think that Saints think that they got a steal by picking up Teddy Bridgewater. I always talk about this for those that just listening to the podcast, haven't heard it before, but Teddy Bridgewater was drafted and he was the 32nd pick in the NFL draft by the Minnesota Vikings, the very last pick in the first round. But once upon a time, when he was the quarterback at Louisville, everybody was going crazy over Teddy Bridgewater. They loved themselves some Teddy Bridgewater. The big question, and it sounds funny today, but everybody was asking who was going to be the #1 pick. Is it going to be Teddy Bridgewater or is it going to be Johnny Manziel? Yeah, that's right. That Johnny Manziel. The Johnny Manziel that can't seem to keep himself clean. The Johnny Manziel that always seems to be in trouble. Hopefully Johnny Manziel can get it right. I heard that he got signed by the AAF. Congratulations to him. I hope he can get his life on track. But that was the $1 million question. And then Teddy Bridgewater, he had a pro day. And Teddy Bridgewater decided to not throw with a glove. Now, Teddy Bridgewater, throughout his entire time in college, high school, he's always played with a glove on. He wanted to try to impress because there was a story that was going around to say that he relies too much on his glove. And he let that get to him. And he went out there and he played without a glove for the first time in his entire football life. And he went out there and he laid an egg, man. He stunk it up. And his draft stock just went down like the stock market crash in 1929, man. And everybody was like, man, he was just smoking mirrors. He was a system guy. He's not the future of your team. And the Minnesota Vikings picked him up, and he had a couple good seasons before he had that gruesome injury that took him out of football for 2 years. But I think that he can be the future of the New Orleans Saints. This is the issue that I have with him. This is why I would say no. The reason I would say no is because Teddy Bridgewater, to me, sometimes I think that the bright lights get to him at times. I think when the expectations are high, it seems to me like he just shrinks. If you think about week 17, man, you know, I think about it and I kind of tried to dismiss it. But when you think about it, man, Teddy Bridgewater had an opportunity to really show teams that he could be a starting quarterback. And he went out there in week 17 and he didn't do a good job, man. He really didn't. I really went back and I looked at that game. It wasn't that he couldn't throw the ball. I just think that he got a little bit nervous. It was his first start in like almost 2 years. And I think that he just realized the moment. I don't know if somebody talked to him and say, hey, man, this is your moment, man. You can impress people and show, you know, that you can be a starting quarterback in the league. And maybe he let that stuff get to him, but he didn't do a good job, man. And you think about the Carolina Panthers. I mean, they had Kyle Allen in the game, man. This guy was a nobody. I think this guy was sitting on his couch a couple weeks before that game, and he came out there, man. He was lighting up the sky. So what was the difference between Kyle Allen offensive line that was a backup and the Saints offensive line that were backups? I mean, I'll let you all decide that, but I think that sometimes he can let the bright lights get the best of him. But if Teddy Bridgewater can shake off those demons, if Teddy Bridgewater can become more poised, if he can block out the white noise and just focus, I think that he can be the future of the New Orleans Saints. But if he allow, people to get to him, if he allow the critics to talk about him and say that he's not a franchise quarterback, that he's not a starter in the league, that he's never going to lead a franchise to championships, then he's not going to be the future of the Saints. I do think that the New Orleans Saints, however, even though they're trusting in Teddy Bridgewater, I think they need to try to draft a quarterback that can probably sit into that system. And maybe if a Teddy Bridgewater doesn't pan out after Drew Brees retire, maybe that guy can sit behind him. And if Teddy Bridgewater can't do his job on the field, maybe that backup quarterback can come in and be the future of the New Orleans Saints. I mean, we never know. I mean, a guy who's a legend doesn't necessarily have to be a guy that was drafted in the first round for a team. A guy that's a Hall of Famer don't necessarily have to be a guy that was drafted in the top 3. I mean, you got guys like Tom Brady. You got guys like Russell Wilson. I mean, Dak Prescott, even though I don't really think that much of him. I mean, he's still a starting quarterback in the league. And not to mention the great Tom Brady, who was drafted in the 6th round. So sometimes diamonds in the rough are those guys that are drafted late in the NFL draft, and maybe the Saints can kind of find their diamond in the rough if Teddy Bridgewater doesn't pan out. But I'm going to say yes and no. I know I know that sounds kind of wishy-washy, but at the end of the day, I mean, only time will tell. I see some good things out of Teddy, but also I can see some of the things that people are talking about that will make you believe that he is not the future of the New Orleans Saints. But thank you all for submitting your questions. Thank you all for listening to the State of the Saints podcast. Check out the State of the Saints podcast on YouTube, youtube.com, search the State of the Saints podcast. The State of the Saints podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeartRadio.com. Till next time, all I have to say is, who dat?